Every night, when the office floors emptied and the city lights blurred outside the Crestmark Tower windows, Walter Reed began his shift, while executives drove off in black SUVs and interns headed to rooftop lounges. Walter clocked in quietly, gray janitor's uniform, steel-toe boots, and a mop that had seen better days. He didn't say much. Most people didn't even know his name. To them, he was the janitor. To himself, he was something else entirely. Walter wasn't bitter about where he was. He wasn't ashamed of mopping the floors of a 34-story tower downtown. In fact, he took pride in doing the job right. But what no one ever asked him was, "What do you think about while you clean these floors?" Because while Walter was scrubbing sinks and wiping boardroom tables, he wasn't zoning out, he was zoning in. He had one wireless earbud in, always, not for music. Not for escape, but for education, finance podcasts, audiobooks, real estate YouTube lectures. Names like Robert Kiyosaki and Eric Thomas echoed in his ear every night as he cleaned toilets. Walter was studying, quietly, patiently, religiously, and more importantly, he was saving 0.70% of every check. No cable bill. No car loan. No Starbucks. Just grit. Most people at Crestmark barely noticed him. Some nodded politely. Others looked through him like a smudge on the window. One night, as Walter was mopping outside the tech startup's floor, a group of young interns laughed loudly behind him. One of them said, "Yo Walt, you investing that mop money in stocks yet?" Another chimed in, "Man probably dreams of owning this building." Laughter bounced off the marble walls. Walter turned, gave a small smile, and said, "Not dreamin'. Just preparing." They kept laughing. He kept mopping. Later that night, in the tiny janitor's closet, Walter pulled out a spiral notebook from his backpack. The cover was cracked. Pages filled with notes. Leverage debt to acquire cash-flowing assets. Focus on net worth, not net likes. Cash buys freedom. Discipline keeps it. He wrote another line, "They only laugh when they don't understand the plan." He didn't need applause. He needed focus. While others chased clout, he chased ownership. While they took photos in the lobby, he studied how much the lobby cost to build, because Walter Reed wasn't just a janitor. He was the only man in the building who knew what every floor smelled like, and what every square foot could earn in rent. They saw a mop. He saw a multi-million-dollar asset, and one day soon, he was going to buy it. Long before Walter Reed ever set foot in Crestmark Tower, he learned his first business lesson standing in line with food stamps. He was 11. His mother held his hand tight, her eyes fixed ahead while her hands trembled just slightly. The grocery store line felt like it stretched forever, and when they finally reached the cashier, a man behind them muttered under his breath, "If they can't afford to eat, maybe they shouldn't have kids." Walter heard every word. He said nothing. Just clenched his jaw and held back tears. His mother? She stood tall, dignified, proud. Being broke, she told him that night, ain't the same as being poor. Broke is temporary. Poor is a mindset. That line stuck with him like scripture. Walter's father passed when he was just 14. Stroke. No insurance. No will. Just bills. College dreams gone. Sketchbook full of buildings tucked away in a drawer. Walter became the man of the house overnight. First job was cleaning gas station bathrooms for $5 an hour. Second was washing dishes at a soul food diner until 2 a.m. on school nights. He watched his mother turn $40 of groceries into a week's worth of meals. He saw her negotiate overdue rent like a lawyer in church heels. He paid attention. Survival, Walter once said, is just hustle with a different name. By 22, he'd saved $7,000. It wasn't much, but it was something. While his friends spent their checks on sneakers and rims, Walter studied real estate, not the glamorous kind. He wasn't trying to flip mansions. He learned about tax liens, wholesale deals, low-income housing markets, and then he found it, a two-bedroom duplex on Atlanta's south side. Boarded windows. Overgrown yard. Ugly to most, but beautiful to him. Asking price? $28,000. He negotiated down to $21,000. Took out a small personal loan, and for the first time in his life, Walter became an owner. He didn't hire a crew. He patched drywall himself, painted walls at midnight, watched plumbing tutorials on YouTube while eating ramen. 4 months later, he had his first tenant, and for the first time, money came in without punching a clock. It was just $650 a month in rent, but to Walter, it felt like freedom. He didn't post about it. He didn't buy a chain or throw a party. He just whispered to himself, one down, 100 to go. Because poverty didn't break Walter. It built him. It taught him discipline. It taught him patience. It taught him that a man with no backup plan becomes dangerous with focus. And while the world was laughing at janitors, Walter was stacking bricks. One ugly house at a time. By the time Walter Reed bought his third property, he was still sweeping floors at Crestmark Tower 5 nights a week. To most people, he was just still the janitor, still pushing a cart, still carrying trash bags, still invisible, but behind the scenes, Walter was becoming something else, a man with options. He now owned 2 duplexes. Modest, aging buildings on the south side, but they were paying the bills. Every dollar earned from rent was reinvested. Every problem, plumbing leaks, roof patches, loud tenants, was a lesson, not a burden. And then he found an old fourplex just 5 minutes from downtown. Boarded up. Spray paint on the brick. Smelled like mildew when you opened the door, the kind of place most people would drive past without looking twice, but Walter? He stood on the cracked sidewalk and saw cash flow, not cracks. The uglier the house, he whispered, the better the numbers. He bought it in cash, $59,000. Every dime he'd saved. No bank. No agent. Just grit and paperwork. His co-workers noticed the change, not the money. Walter didn't dress flashy, but the glow in his face, the calm in his steps. One night, as he finished wiping the glass doors in the lobby, a fellow janitor named Quincy asked him, "Man, why you always got your earbuds in? You listening to sermons or something?" Walter smiled. "Sort of," he said. "I'm listening to freedom." That conversation would change both their lives. From that night on, Walter began mentoring Quincy, taught him about credit, budgeting, side hustles, told him to track every dollar like it owed him rent. Quincy started cutting expenses, paid off his car, and soon, he was stacking money. Fast. Walter didn't charge him a dime, because someone had once taught him for free. His mother, each one teach one, she used to say, that's how we build a village. Meanwhile, Walter was renovating the fourplex. No fancy contractor crews. Just local help, barbers, uncles, handymen who'd fallen on hard times. He paid fairly, taught openly, kept receipts, and by the end of 6 months, he had 4 tenants moved in, and positive cash flow every single month. It was the flip nobody saw coming, not because it made headlines, but because nobody ever expected a janitor to pull it off. Walter didn't care for praise. He just added the address to his spreadsheet and moved on. Real wealth, he said, ain't loud. It's consistent. He still showed up to Crestmark Tower every night, same mop, same quiet smile. But now, when he looked at the building, he didn't just see glass and steel. He saw an opportunity, waiting for its new owner, and soon, the man with the mop would be the man signing the checks. By now, Walter Reed had 3 properties under his belt. 2 duplexes and 1 fourplex. He was pulling in more from rent each month than he was from his janitor job, but he kept showing up, same uniform, same humble stride, not because he had to, but because he wanted to stay grounded. See, Walter understood something most people missed. Money can get you out, but community is what brings others with you. One night, during his break, he sat on a bench outside Crestmark Tower eating a turkey sandwich. Quincy, his coworker, sat beside him, scrolling through bank apps and smiling. "Bro, I just hit 5,000 saved," Quincy said, grinning. "I ain't never seen that much in my account before." Walter nodded. "Good. That's chapter 1. Now let's talk about ownership." That conversation sparked something bigger. Walter started inviting Quincy to weekend meetups, not in bored absolutely. It was a regular Tuesday night. Walter Reed was buffing the floors on the 12th floor of Crestmark Tower, the tech startup level, when he overheard something that made him pause mid-step. Two executives in dress shirts and loosened ties were talking by the coffee machine. Their voices were low, but Walter's ears were trained by years of silence. "We're pulling out next quarter. The lease is killing us. You hear the tower's owner might default soon. Building's bleeding tenants." Walter kept wiping the counter, pretending not to hear, but in his mind, alarms were going off. "Crestmark is for sale." He finished his shift like always, quiet, efficient, unnoticed, but when he got home that night, he didn't sleep. He researched, and sure enough, buried deep in a local real estate report, Crestmark Tower was in financial trouble. Occupancy was down. Ownership had changed hands 3 times in 2 years. And now, a private sale was being considered to offload the entire 34-story building. It looked like risk. Walter. It looked like destiny. He spent the next 18 months getting ready. He stopped all renovations on his other properties and froze his spending completely. He formed a legal entity, Reed Equity Group LLC, and brought in everyone who had walked the journey with him. Quincy, the barber from his duplex, the mechanic who fixed his truck for free years ago, even a retired teacher he met at church. They weren't rich, but they were committed. Every one of them brought what they had. $3,000 here, $5,000 there. Walter matched every dollar tenfold. Together, they formed an investor syndicate, and Walter? He became the face of it. He also did his homework. He knew the tower's square footage, average rental income, vacancy rate, and the cost of minor renovations on each floor. He wasn't guessing. He was calculating. He didn't have Wall Street backers, but he had something more powerful: discipline. By the time the private auction was announced, Walter was ready. Most of the people entering that bidding room came in expensive suits, carrying portfolios and business cards. Walter came in with documents, deeds, cash letters, and proof of funds, all from blue-collar contributors and rental cash flow. They didn't have flash, they had facts, and while the others were pitching theories and looking for leverage, Walter already knew the truth: this building's not dying. It just needs someone who sees value where others see problems. For most, Crestmark was an asset. For Walter, it was home, the very building where he'd pushed a mop for 12 years, and now, he was preparing to buy it. The marble floors of Crestmark Tower gleamed that morning, polished by the same man who once walked them with a mop and bucket, but today, Walter Reed wasn't wearing his janitor's uniform. He was in a sharp navy blue suit. Simple, clean, tailored. No flashy tie. No gold watch. Just quiet confidence. He walked through the revolving doors, his leather folder tucked neatly under his arm. Inside it, ownership contracts, syndicate documents, and proof of $12 million in pooled capital. It had taken him nearly 2 decades to reach this moment, but he wasn't nervous. He was ready. The lobby was filled with high-level investors, attorneys, and real estate brokers, most of them white men in tailored suits, loudly tossing around phrases like "ARA," upside potential, and prime asset recovery. They barely looked at Walter, except one. Chase Morgan. A former intern Walter remembered from years ago, now a junior partner at a flashy investment firm. The same guy who once joked that Walter dreamed of owning the building. Chase spotted him, and a smirk curled across his lips. Well, if it isn't Walter the janitor, he said, loud enough for others to hear. You lost, man? The maintenance room's downstairs. A few chuckles followed. One man glanced at Walter's suit as if trying to figure out what was wrong with the picture. Walter just smiled. Not lost, he said calmly. Just walking in the front door today. Chase raised an eyebrow. You here to clean the boardroom or something? Walter stepped closer and looked him square in the eye. Nah, he said. I'm here to buy it. The smile faded from Chase's face. Wait, you're bidding? Walter simply nodded, then walked past him, silent, composed, and fully aware of the weight of the moment that he didn't need to prove anything, that he was the proof. Inside the boardroom, names were called one by one. Big offers were made. Promises tossed around. People with more power than purpose came to play the game. Then they called Walter Reed. Representing Reed Equity Group LLC. Murmurs buzzed. Someone whispered, who? Walter stood up. Adjusted his suit. Walked forward. No slideshow. No fancy pitch, just documents. Numbers. Reality. We're offering full cash, Walter said. No loans. No delays. We know the building. I worked here for 12 years. I know every corner, every system, every tenant. What others call risk, I call home. Silence. Then, one of the board members nodded slowly. Another leaned forward. What they heard wasn't money talking. It was conviction. Back in the lobby, Chase watched as Walter stepped out with firm handshakes and nods from the panel. No mop this time. No jokes, just a man walking like he already owned the place, and deep down, Chase knew he had just disrespected the future landlord of his firm's next office lease. The final paperwork took just over a week, and when it was done, when every I was dotted and every T was crossed, Walter Reed walked into Crestmark Tower not as an employee, but as its owner. The entire 34-story glass and steel monument to money and ambition was now under the management of Reed Equity Group LLC, a company built from barbershops, night shifts, second chances, and silent sacrifices. There was no ribbon-cutting ceremony. No press release. No viral photo op. Walter didn't need that. He just wanted the deed, and he had it. 1 week later, Walter sat in the top floor corner office, the one that used to belong to the building's previous CEO. Sunlight poured in from floor-to-ceiling windows. The city stretched wide beneath him. And around the conference table sat people who looked like the ones cleaning the rooms, cooking the meals, fixing the elevators, because they were. Walter had invited the original members of his investment group, Quincy, Ms. Lena the retired teacher, Big Ron from the auto shop, even Darius the barber who'd been stacking cash under his mattress for years. He passed out thick envelopes one by one. Each person opened theirs, confused, until they realized what was inside: ownership certificates, official proof that they weren't just helping Walter. They were Reed Equity Group. We don't rent anymore, Walter said, we own. And if I made it in the front door, I'm holding it open. Some cried. Others laughed. Everyone felt seen. It wasn't about the money, though that was coming. It was about dignity. About walking through a lobby you used to clean, now knowing it had your name on the paperwork. Down in the lobby, word began to spread. Maintenance staff whispered, is it true? Walter owns the building now? The security guard grinned wide and said, y'all better start saying Mr. Reed. Chase Morgan, the junior executive who once mocked Walter, tried to play it cool when they crossed paths. Hey man, congrats on everything. Didn't expect that, to be honest. Walter looked at him calmly. I know, he said. You weren't supposed to. Then he walked away, not with arrogance, but with peace. The next day, A new plaque was quietly installed in the building lobby, owned and operated by Reed Equity Group, built from the ground up. Walter stood in front of it, hands in his pockets, while tenants walked past without noticing that he didn't need to be seen, that he just needed to see it for himself, because ownership, it looked good on him, and he made sure it fit others too. It had been 6 months since Walter Reed became the owner of Crestmark